Why is giving back and helping others so important to you? It appears in your novels, and basically your charities, what you've done has been extraordinary.
Well, first of all, thank you. I don't think the charity should be described as extraordinary, and I think that that's the way I try to begin answering that question. It is, and a lot of fuss is made over people who are charitable, but that really shouldn't be the case. I think, especially any of us who are blessed to have, you know, something good happen, and I've had it happen to me in spades, it's a responsibility. It's not an option, it's a responsibility. And you know, I learned that from Morrie, first and foremost. Well, I'm sure I learned it from my parents along the way, but I think it was reinforced when Morrie said to me one time I was with him. He said, so you got this big newspaper column that you write all the time, yeah? He said, so what do you do for your community? And I said, what do you mean? He said, what do you do for your community, your charities? I said, I write checks, which is what I did, you know. And he said, that could say a lot, by the way. You're Jewish anyhow. There's the wealth of wisdom in it. And anybody can write a check, he said. You've been given a voice, and you need to use it for something more than aggrandizing yourself. I remember because no one uses the word aggrandize, you know, except him. And of course, that stayed with me for a long time, and that was actually the year that I started my first charity in Detroit, which has grown to a number of them. And I really find that, you know, his axiom of giving is living. You know, I used to go into, you know, I wasn't the only person who visited Morrie, obviously. You know, people came on other days. They kind of left Tuesdays alone for us, but once in a while, people would come on Tuesdays. And I began to notice a pattern of people who came to visit Morrie. They, if they just had seen him on TV, or, you know, he's a bit of a celebrity as he was dying after those 3 Nightline programs. And people would follow the same pattern who were uncomfortable with death. You know, they would have a strategy to go in and talk to him. They'd bring pictures, and they'd, you know, would be happy, upbeat, you know, I'm not going to say anything sad. And then the door would open to his office, and they would go inside, and the door would close, and they'd come out an hour later in tears. But they would be crying about their divorce, their love life, their job, or whatever. And they'd say, well, you know, I went in and I tried to cheer him up, and I started telling him stories, but after a couple minutes he started asking me about my life, and so I told him, and then he started asking me more, and I told him, and then I really opened up, and next thing I know I was crying, you know, and I went in to comfort him, but I ended up being comforted by him. And, you know, I saw this so many times that finally I went into him and said, I don't get it, you know. If anyone had finally earned the right to say, let's not talk about your problems, let's talk about my problems, you know, you're it. Why don't you do it? And I never forget this. He said, why would I do that, Mitch? That's just taking from people. And taking from people makes me feel like I'm dying. Giving makes me feel like I'm living. And of course, I always tell people, you know, it's a profound little sentence. And it also rhymes, so it's easy to remember. Giving makes you feel like you're living. And I have found that that is ineffably true. It is so simple that you would think, why don't you figure out? But you think of all the things that you've taken in your life that are discarded and don't even matter anymore, and they get old and you don't care about them. And then you think of all the things that you have given. There's a little girl right here who's an example of that for me. And, you know, I have an orphanage in Haiti, and she's one of our kids, and she's battling something right now, and she's up here, and there's never been an opportunity for a finer moment in my life than that. Nothing I'll ever write, nothing I'll ever do will ever match up to the opportunity to help a child survive. How do you ignore that? You know, it's so obvious once you go through it. So, like I say, I just think it's an obligation if you have the opportunity to do it, and that's how I view it.